I had a weird personal experience with this when I was a White House speechwriter, because I was a speechwriter for Trump in what feels like an eternity ago now. But I had a weird assignment once where I was asked to look up the quotes that JFK had to say about his own military generals, and to potentially fold that into a speech, because at the time in 2020, Trump was concerned that his own military was betraying him behind his back, and was curious about JFK experiencing the same problems and what JFK had to say about the Pentagon not running things through the National Security Council channels. The Pentagon is supposed to answer to the National Security Council, just like state, just like CIA. And so in so many ways, there is this mere reflection of Trump in the JFK assassination story. And what we're seeing now is sort of a second shot at the apple.
When USAID is using CIA planes to run heroin to Vietnam, they're selling them to American soldiers. Yeah? Is it like they're
Absolutely.
they're running heroin to get our own American service members addicted to heroin?
Absolutely.
Much like the poppy sales in Afghanistan are being used for opioids here in the States to destroy lives. Is this correct?
Right. Oh, absolutely. I mean,
Okay.
this whole CIA drug running operation started with the U.S. War Department back in the 1930s, before it was even called the Defense Department, and it renamed from the Department of War to the Department of Defense, just to make it look like, we're forward defending ourselves. We're not declaring war on Iraq or Afghanistan. We're not going to war in Vietnam. We're forward defending our interests. But that was originally done through the OSS and through the War Department, when they were using military airlines in the 1930s in China, when we were supporting Chiang Kai-shek and the Chinese nationalists against the Chinese communists. We were doing that same strategy. They didn't invent that in Cambodia and Vietnam. This is part of the deep interlinkages here, actually, between the same cast of characters who were running the CIA at the time. This is James Jesus Angleton, who was the head of CIA counterintelligence and whose name is all over these documents. He's sort of a lead suspect in the CIA role in the JFK assassination. James Jesus Angleton, he grew up in Italy. Italy was the first place that the CIA launched its political covert action arm in. The State Department got the idea to use the CIA for political dirty work in 1948. In April 1948, its first political job that it was assigned was rigging the 1948 Italy election to swing it towards the pro-West, pro-America candidate over the pro-Russia communist candidate. NSC 10-2 was created just 2 months later. That's the National Security Council memo. Again, back to this NSC versus CIA power struggle. Again, NSC is the White House. So you can just think of it, when you hear NSC now, just think Trump. It's, so NSC versus CIA today is Trump versus CIA. And so the CIA got its plausible deniability cloak in a memo in 1948 called NSC 10-2. That's the plausible deniability doctrine. That all was created because the National Security Council was so enthused about the power of the CIA and its successful operation in Italy in 1948. James Jesus Angleton comes out of that. He grew up in Italy. He was the son of a sort of diplomat commercial family. His father was deeply involved with the Chamber of Commerce in Italy. So this is back to this sort of commercial interlinkage with CIA and state. That goes back to what we were talking about with CIA drug running, gets right back to the military, because this is another beast that Elon and Trump are going to have to take on, is that they have not yet really touched the Pentagon in the way that they have tried to touch U.S. aid. That's something that Doge is doing review of over. And I said this on Joe Rogan about a month ago or a month and a half ago, where I said this fight for U.S. aid is going to be on steroids when it comes to reforming the Pentagon, which is $900 billion. But you're going to find the Pentagon, when you try to stop these drug networks. Right now we've declared, narco cartels as being terrorists. And this was something that the media has been screaming about. We saw that the New York Times came out and said it was a disaster to designate Mexican cartels as terrorists because it could have massive negative economic consequences on U.S. companies who can't avoid doing business with the cartels effectively, both in foreign countries and at the supply chain layer. We saw the U.S. Institute for Peace, which just this week had to have its doors kicked down and its president forcibly removed by federal police because he refused to resign. Because now this institution, I should note, and this relates to the drug networks, because this is preview. Let me just, open up the crystal ball and just tell you what's going to happen over the next 6 to 12 months here.